Week 5 DFS must plays. These are the 5 that I'm building around constantly. I'm going to give you 5 of the best players. Stick around. I'm going to talk you through my favorite plays: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. Going to give you some examples of how I'd use them this weekend, as well as how to stack and how to turn those lineups into winning lineups. Let's get into it. First of all, we've got to start with a quarterback position. And it's Kirk Cousins, 6,900 against the Chiefs. This is one of the premier matchups of this week. 53-point over-under. And it just feels like the Vikings defense, they just give up points to play teams that are playing against. But meanwhile, the Vikings, they're absolutely cooking through the passing game. You know, Kirk Cousins had a disappointing week against the Panthers last week, but the Panthers don't really push teams in the same way that the Chiefs can. You know, Kirk Cousins, he's thrown for 300 plus passing yards in each of the previous 3 games. On DraftKings, that's going to give you 3 points bonus, which is really important in making up the difference between a player like Kirk Cousins and the dual threats who add to it on the ground. Kirk Cousins, he's also had multiple touchdowns in each of the past 3 games, 9 touchdowns over those games. The Vikings, they lead the league with 19 passing plays over 20 receiving yards, and it just seems clear that they're planning on passing at a very high rate this year, partly because their running game isn't particularly great. The Chiefs have allowed the 12th most yards per game on defense this year. They just allowed Zach Wilson to have the best game of his career. The Chiefs' defense is better than it sounds, but that's more at the front. Like, their defensive line is very good. In the secondary, they're not incredibly impressive. No real star power back there. And I don't think they can stop Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison keeps getting loose, keeps getting those deep shots downfield. TJ Hawkinson is going to be a volume hog, and he's going to put up points on a Chiefs defense who struggle with tight ends. So for me, Kirk Cousins is in play for cash games and in tournaments. If you're looking for tournaments, I'd be stacking him either with Justin Jefferson and bringing it back with Travis Kelce, or you could use Kirk Cousins without Jefferson, playing him with either Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, a combination of both, and run it back on the other side with Isaiah Pacheco for a really nice game stack. While you're here, if this is your first time watching Fantasy Sanctuary, hit that subscribe button. Bring you these videos every single week. Loads of matchups data, loads of DFS content. We are going to get straight on to the next one, and it is Breece Hall, 5,400 against the Broncos. You see there, it's a 43-point over-under, so not the highest of the week, but there's still absolutely plenty of potential for Breece Hall in this one. Robert Saleh said this week that the Jets are no longer going to keep Breece Hall on a pitch count. It seems he's finally caught up to what the rest of us have known for ages now. Dalvin Cook isn't it. Of course, it's not been massively smooth sailing for Breece Hall. You know, according to John Daigle of 4 for 4, Breece Hall's first 2 carries went for 109 yards, and then his next 30 carries only turned into 101 yards. But sometimes what you need is just, you need the right matchup to help get you back onto your groove. And the Broncos are absolutely that. You know, the Broncos rushing defense have allowed 613 rushing yards so far. That's over 100 more than any other team. The Broncos have also allowed a league-leading 7 rushing touchdowns to running backs, second highest yards per carry at 5.8. Make no mistake whatsoever, this is exactly the kind of matchup that Breece Hall needs to crush in. In terms of how I'd be using Breece Hall this week, at 5,400 and fresh off those quotes, Breece Hall is going to be chalky, which for anyone unfamiliar, that means very popular. Lean into that, enjoy it for cash games. I think he's probably one of the best cash game running backs on this slate. And if you're looking for tournaments, I'd be looking for small correlations. I'd probably play Breece Hall with maybe one Broncos receiver at the max. I don't think that it's a game that I want to heavily attack. Moving on to the wide receiver position, let's see. Hit that like button down below. I know that you're enjoying this content. I know it's good content. And I know it helps you with your lineups. So hit that like button. Marquise Brown, 5,000 against the Bengals, 44.5 over under. Josh Dobbs has been sneaky good. You know, he's the quarterback 15. You can see it on screen there. But the Cardinals defense, they rank 30th in DVOA. They're not stopping anyone. So this game has a little bit more shootout potential than we might have thought it would a few weeks ago. After week 1, I wrote that I was disappointed to see Marquise Brown's target share wasn't above 30%, given the lack of talent around him. But since then, Brown's recorded target shares of 34%, 33%, and then a slight dip back to 24% last week. But across those 3 games, he's had 27 targets. He's turned them into no less than 16 fantasy points per week, which makes him a top 24 option. At 5K, that's a really attractive, play. The bungling Bengals, they've allowed the 8th highest receiving yards per reception to wide receivers over 4 games at 13.8. And it shouldn't be surprising to see Marquise Brown get loose. He's 7th in the league in air yard share at 42%. Really, the Cardinals just know he's the best chance, and they are leaning into it at this point. I think you can play Marquise Brown in cash games, those kind of double up multipliers this week. In tournaments, the obvious stack is like the Joe Burrow Bengals side with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and then Marquise Brown as a bringback. But if you want to flip that and get a little more different, playing Josh Dobbs with Marquise Brown and Jamar Chase, I think that has plenty of upside. It gives you Josh Dobbs' dual threat ability. He's putting up over 40 rushing yards per week. And it gets you away from Joe Burrow, whose calf injury still looks a little bit touch and go. If you're enjoying this video, each week I do a DFS clinic video, which is exclusive to our YouTube members only. In that video, I talk good chalk, bad chalk, game theory. I talk about the cash game core, the players who I'm building around for these cash game multipliers. And I also talk about my favorite GPP stacks. You can access that by hitting join below, select Golden Deck Chair membership. It's less than $2 a week, and it's going to pay for itself in no time at all. Moving on, Wan'Dale Robinson, 3,000 versus Dolphins. This is the stone cold minimum price we ever see wide receivers out on DraftKings, and it's rare we get such a good option at that pricing. Through 2 games back, Wan'Dale Robinson's combined for 10 touches for 68 yards, good for a total of 15.8 PPR points. Now, that's not anything crazy. Like, there's a reason why it's still 3,000. But the volume, it's good enough that it should entice you to be able to put Wan'Dale Robinson into a lineup. A player at 3,000 when we've got players like Justin Jefferson's 9,400, Tyreek Hill's $9,000. You need to be able to find these savings if you want to play those players who are in good matchups. Wan'Dale Robinson, he saw his snaps climb in week 4, and barring any setbacks, he's likely going to be the wide receiver 2 in terms of routes run, behind only Darius Slayton this week. The Dolphins defense, man, they're fraudulent. Xavier Howard is not a good player, or he isn't good enough to be paid the amount that he is. Through 4 games, they've allowed the 6th highest catch rate to wide receivers, joint 2nd most touchdowns, and the 11th most fantasy points to slot receivers. So that's an area we know Wan'Dale Robinson's going to play, and he's going to be that safety valve. We've seen it over the years with Sterling Shepard. Daniel Jones likes targeting players in the slot, and he can pepper them with targets. He's too cheap to ignore. I'll play Wan'Dale Robinson in tournaments. I'll play Wan'Dale Robinson in cash games. I mean, you can use him as an obvious bring back if you're doing like a Tua, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, and then Wan'Dale Robinson as the salary relief. Moving on, we've got Sam Laporta, 5,000 versus the Panthers. The Lions rookie, make no mistake, he is on pace for a historic rookie season for a tight end. Year after year, they disappoint when they come into the league. But Sam Laporta is doing fantastic. He leads all tight ends in receiving yards with 242, ranks 2nd in total PPR points through 4 games. And this week, the Lions, they look particularly banged up. Sam Laporta's role is probably the most secure among the pass catchers. Yes, as Josh Reynolds. Yes, as Khalif Raymond. But Laporta is somebody who the Lions seem comfortable leaning on at times. And if Amon-Ra St. Brown misses out, which sounds likely, then I would expect Laporta to lead this team in targets and receiving yards. The Panthers have allowed the 7th highest yards per reception to tight ends at 11.2 yards, and I just don't think they're going to be able to defend Laporta. For me, Laporta is the easiest click for cash games this week at 5K. I think you're getting a really safe floor. And if you're looking at tournaments, I don't mind Laporta. I think I'd possibly chase some of the tight ends like TJ Hawkinson, Mark Andrews in that scenario. But if you are playing cash games, I'm probably going to max out at 2 Lions players per cash game lineup. So that is it for week 5 DFS must plays. These are the 5 best players. I know they're going to be good for you. Leave your questions in the chat. I will absolutely get back to every single comment down there. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and we will be back next week for more DFS must plays.